The Mockery Hall, the grand hall of the consortium of stars, was carved from living crystal, glowing faintly blue with the pulse of alien life beneath its walls. Thousands of alien leaders filled the tiered balconies, their voices a rumbling chorus of amusement, scorn, and disdain. At the center stood a single human. He looked so small compared to them. His boots scuffed the polished black floor, his worn jacket stitched with repairs, his face tired, scarred. His name was Alias Mercer, and in that vast chamber of power, he looked less like a diplomat and more like a mechanic dragged into a palace by mistake. The consortium had invited him only because Earth had recently stumbled into the galactic stage. A minor planet, a primitive species, a curiosity at best. The High Regent of the Serati clicked his mandibles, voice amplified across the chamber. Humans, a scavenger race. You arrive here with rusted ships and call yourselves explorers. Do you not see your place? You are beneath us. Laughter rolled across the hall, hisses and croaks and alien chittering echoing through the vaulted chamber. Elias stood silent. His jaw tightened. Beside him, Talienar, a lean, feathered being of the Kyrene species, lowered her gaze. She had befriended Elias months ago when he had repaired her damaged shuttle with nothing but scrap parts. She warned him not to speak today, not to challenge the consortium, not to make himself a target. But Elias could feel the weight of the mockery pressing down on his shoulders. Humanity was being dismissed, written off before they even had a chance. Another voice cut through the laughter. This one deeper, sharper, the voice of Lord Verith, head of the Dominion Bloc, a faction infamous for enslaving weaker worlds. Tell me, Yumi, why should we allow Earth into this council? What do your people offer? What power? What wisdom? What makes your kind worth notice? Silence fell. Thousands of eyes, glowing, compound, slitted, turned toward the lone human. Elias let the silence hang for a breath longer. His heart hammered, but his voice, when it came, was calm, low, steady, because we never stop moving forward. 5 words, 5 simple words. The chamber froze. The laughter died. Even the regent's mandibles twitched in confusion. Elias lifted his chin, eyes scanning the crowd. You think we are weak because we are new, because our ships are smaller, our weapons fewer, but you don't understand. Every world we've reached, every obstacle we've faced, we've survived by moving forward. No matter the cost, no matter the enemy, no matter the void in front of us, humanity doesn't stop. The hall buzzed with sudden unease. The words were simple, yet something in them pressed against the pride of empires thousands of years old. The alien leaders had mocked, expecting excuses, apologies, begging. Instead, they were given a challenge. Talienar's feathers flared with nervous energy. She leaned close, whispering, Elias, do you know what you've just done? He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Lord Verith. The Dominion leader's smile was thin, cruel. Then perhaps human. It is time we put your claim to the test. The floor beneath Elias trembled. From the shadows at the edge of the hall, great armored doors slid open. A low growl of engines echoed through the chamber. Something vast was being brought inside. Elias clenched his fists. He had spoken his truth. And now the galaxy would answer. Asterisk trial by fire. The armored doors groaned wider, their edges scraping the crystalline floor. From the shadows emerged a beast of steel and fury. It was not alive, not truly, yet it moved with an animal's menace. A Dominion war construct, shaped like a predator from some ancient nightmare. Its body was plated in black metal, its legs like razors, and its core pulsed with a molten red glow. Gasps echoed from the balconies. The leaders leaned forward. Some whispered. Others clicked their mandibles in approval. Talienar stiffened, feathers trembling in alarm. They dare unleash a gorehound inside the hall? Elias, this is madness. Lord Vareth's voice cut through the rising tension. The human speaks of resilience. Then let us see it. A gorehound's head swiveled, lenses glowing crimson as it locked onto Elias. Its jaws opened, revealing spinning teeth designed to shred armor. The floor panels shifted, rising around Elias, cutting him off from any escape. The hall itself had become an arena. The crowd above cheered. Elias swallowed hard. His pulse pounded in his ears. He had expected mockery, maybe exile. He hadn't expected this. But fear had always been part of his life. Fear in the freezing void of deep space mining runs. Fear in backwater colonies where air scrubbers failed and death came quietly in the night. Fear during the collapse wars back home, when Earth's survival hinged on people like him repairing machines under fire. Fear was not new, and he had survived it all. The gorehound's claws screeched across the crystal floor as it lunged. Elias dove aside, rolling across the cold surface. The machine struck where he had been a moment before, stone shards flying. The aliens roared in approval. Kalyaner gripped the balcony rail, her beak clicking in panic. She wanted to shout, to intervene, but to interfere now would mean death for both of them. Elias scrambled to his feet, searching the arena. No weapons. No cover. Nothing but polished crystal walls and the towering monster. The gorehound stalked him, each step shaking the ground. Elias whispered under his breath. Always moving forward, right? Fine, let's move. The gorehound lunged again. Elias sprinted toward the wall, boots slamming against the smooth surface as he ran at an angle, barely keeping ahead of the snapping jaws. His fingers brushed the panel seams where the arena walls had risen. A seam. A weakness. The machine pivoted, swinging its bladed tail. Elias ducked, the tip slicing through his jacket, scoring a hot line across his back. He stumbled but stayed upright. Pain flared, but pain was useful. Pain meant he was still alive. He jammed his fingers into the seam, found a gap. A maintenance hatch, small, but real. His instincts screamed. Every machine had an access point. The Dominion loved control, and control meant systems to exploit. The gorehound charged. Elias yanked at the hatch with everything he had. It gave way just as the monster bore down. He dove inside. The crowd gasped. The gorehound slammed against the wall, jaws gnashing, claws scraping. But Elias had vanished into the machine's guts. Inside was heat and noise. Wires and conduits glowed red, sparks spraying. Elias pulled his knife from his boot. One tool, one chance. He slashed at cables, feeling the gorehound convulse as systems overloaded. He braced himself as coolant sprayed across his face, stinging his eyes. The beast reared, shrieking in a metallic roar that rattled the chamber. Outside, the crowd erupted into shouts. Some were furious. Some were astonished. Talyaner's feathers flared in disbelief. He's inside it. He's fighting it from within. Lord Vareth rose slowly, eyes narrowing. His amusement faded into something colder. Inside the machine, Elias forced himself deeper, lungs burning in the heat. His knife struck a thick cluster of cables. Sparks exploded, and the gorehound's core flared. Asterisk the beast staggered, limbs locking, jaws snapping wildly. Elias crawled toward the glowing heart of the construct the power core. The Dominion built for strength, not for fail-safes. Elias knew this kind of arrogance. He had seen it before, in the ruins of Earth's broken cities, where overconfidence always led to downfall. He drove his knife deep into the core's coolant line. The reaction was instant. The gorehound convulsed, its metal body screeching. Energy built in its chest, heat rising to unbearable levels. Elias crawled back out of the hatch, rolling onto the arena floor as the machine collapsed behind him. The gorehound's core burst, flames shooting skyward. The entire hall shook with the force-dot smoke curled upward. The great predator lay still, broken, and in the middle of the arena, Elias Mercer stood, chest heaving, knife in hand. Silence. Thousands of leaders stared down at him. Their laughter was gone, their scorn gone. In its place was something else, an unease that spread like wildfire. Elias raised his knife slightly, voice hoarse but steady. Test passed. A ripple of voices shook the chamber. Taliener covered her beak with both hands, torn between terror and pride. Lord Vareth stepped forward, his smile thin as a blade. Impressive, but survival is not strength, human. You tore down one beast. What will you do when you face an empire? The chamber doors groaned open again. But this time, it wasn't another Gore-hound-got soldiers. Hundreds of them. Dominion shock troopers in black armor, rifles glowing with plasma charge, marched into the hall. Their boots pounded in unison, a wall of power and menace. Gasps filled the balconies. Even consortium leaders shifted uneasily. This was no test. This was something else. Elias turned slowly, sweat dripping down his face. His knife felt like a toy against the tide of soldiers. Lord Vareth's voice echoed cold and final. You say your kind never stops moving forward. Let us see if you still believe those words. When your path leads only into fire. The Dominion troops raised their weapons as one. Ashes of trust. The Dominion soldiers filled the hall like a storm front. Their black armor gleamed under the crystal lights, helmets smooth and faceless, rifles glowing with plasma cores. The consortium's leaders shifted uneasily in their seats. Some whispered, others looked away. None spoke. This was supposed to be a council of equals, a gathering of the galaxy's powers. But here, before their eyes, the Dominion turned the hall into an execution ground. Elias tightened his grip on the ally. Knife, though he knew it was useless. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. Fear was there, yes, but deeper still, a stubborn calm. He would not kneel. Beside him, Taliener finally broke. She leapt from her balcony, gliding down with a flare of feathers, landing at Elias. Sighed. This is not justice. She cried, her voice trembling but clear. The human survived your trial. He earned the right to speak. The crowd erupted. Some cheered her courage. Others hissed in outrage. Lord Vareth only smiled, baring his sharp teeth. Then you shall share his fate. The soldiers raised their rifles. The air hummed with deadly energy. Elias whispered without looking at her. You didn't have to do this. And leave you alone? Taliener's beak clicked softly. That is not our way. The rifles powered higher, their glow filling the chamber. Then a booming voice shook the hall. Enough! The High Regent of the Sarati rose from his throne, mandibles snapping. His voice cut across the chamber like thunder. This chamber is not the Dominion slaughterhouse. Lower your weapons. For the first time, hesitation flickered through the Dominion ranks. The regent was old, powerful, revered. To defy him openly would fracture the consortium. Lord Vareth's smile faltered, but only for a breath. As you wish, he said smoothly, lifting a hand. The soldiers lowered their rifles, though their movements were stiff, reluctant. The regent's mandibles clicked in disgust. You shame this council, Vareth. But Elias saw the truth in the regent's eyes as the old alien sat heavily again. Fear. Even the mighty Sarati feared the Dominion. The rifles were lowered, but the message was clear. Elias had won no safety-only time. That night, the corridors of the consortium's citadel were thick with whispers. Delegates hurried past with eyes averted. Elias and Taliener were led to a guest chamber, but even the guards avoided looking at them. Elias sat by the window, staring at the alien city. Below, spires of crystal rose into the clouds, lights glowing in patterns like constellations. Beautiful, fragile, and beneath it all, the Dominion's shadow stretched long. Taliener paced, feathers bristling. "They will kill you, Elias. If not, in the hall, then in some shadowed corridor. The Dominion does not forget." Elias said nothing for a long time. Finally, he turned. "Then we don't wait for them to decide. We move first." She stopped pacing, eyes wide. "Move? Where? The entire city is theirs." "Not the whole city." Elias leaned forward, voice low. "On the way here, I saw something. Refugees. Whole groups of people from smaller worlds, camped in the outer districts. Hungry, beaten down. Not Dominion citizens, Dominion subjects." Taliener's feathers drooped. "They are forgotten. The Council does nothing for them. Then, maybe it's time someone did." Elias stood, squaring his shoulders. His body still ached from the fight, his jacket torn, but his eyes burned steady. "If humanity has one gift, it's this. We don't leave people behind. Not if we can help it." They slipped into the city under cloak of night, the citadels. Shining towers gave way to crumbling blocks of stone and rusting metal. Fires burned in barrels. Thin, frightened eyes followed them from the shadows. Here, the Dominion's power was clear. Families huddled under broken shelters. Children picked, threw trash for scraps. Soldiers patrolled the alleys, their boots heavy on the cracked streets. Talienar's chest tightened as she walked. "My people say survival is obedience. That defiance only brings pain. I believed it once." She glanced at Elias. "No, I'm not so sure." Elias stopped by a broken fountain where refugees gathered. He crouched, pulling a small tool from his pocket, a cracked multi-tool held together with tape. He set to work on the fountain's mechanism. The aliens watched, confused, as he pried open panels, rerouted lines, and twisted pipes. Minutes later, with a spark and a cough, water gushed forth. Gasps rose. Children rushed forward, cupping water in their hands. Parents pulled them close, tears in their eyes. A Kyrene elder stepped forward, bowing to Elias. "No one. Number. One has cared for us here. Why do you?" Elias looked at him. His hands were still wet from the fountain. His voice was quiet. "Because you matter." The elder's eyes shone. Taliener felt something stir deep in her chest, a strange warmth she hadn't felt in years, but the moment shattered with the heavy march of boots. Dominion soldiers turned the corner, rifles raised. "Step away," one marked. "This sector is under Dominion control." The refugees scattered, dragging children with them. Elias stayed by the fountain, knife hidden behind his leg. The soldier sneered at him. "Human, you're far from your quarters." Taliener stepped forward, feathers flaring. "He was repairing your fountain." "Do you call clean water a crime?" The soldiers laughed. "Everything is a crime if the Dominion says so." Their rifles lifted. Elias acted first. He slammed his knife into the fountain's pipe. A burst of pressurized water blasted into the soldiers, knocking two off their feet. Elias lunged, ripping a rifle free, swinging it toward the third. The alley exploded into chaos. Plasma bolts scorched walls. Refugees screamed. Taliener dove, slashing with her claws. In seconds, it was over. 3 soldiers lay unconscious or worse. The alley reeked of ozone and smoke. Elias' chest heaved. He held the stolen rifle loosely, eyes scanning the terrified faces around him. "They'll come back," he said grimly. "More will come." Taliener swallowed hard. "We have to leave the city." "No," Elias said, voice firm. "We spread the word. People need to know they don't have to bow forever. They can fight back." The Cairene elder's eyes glistened. He stepped closer, voice trembling. There are thousands like us on this world alone, millions across the stars. If the Dominion hears you speak, they will hunt us all. Elias looked at him, at the children clutching their parents, at the broken city. His scarred face softened. Then they'd better be ready, because we're not stopping. 2 nights later, whispers spread like fire. A human had defied the Dominion in the shadows. A human had brought water to the thirsty. A human had struck soldiers down and lived. The story grew, passed from mouth to mouth, twisted and magnified, until it became more than truth. It became hope. But hope is dangerous. In the Consortium Citadel, Lord Virith stood before a council of shadowed figures. His voice was sharp with fury. The human undermines us. Already the weak looked to him as if he were a savior. This cannot continue. One figure shifted in the dark, voice oily. And what do you propose? Virith's teeth glinted. We burn his hope to ash. We show him what happens to those who defy us. We make him choose between his own survival and the lives of the innocent he claims to protect. The next dawn, as Elias and Taliener crept through the refugee quarter, the sky above lit crimson. Transports screamed overhead, black and swift, dropping Dominion fire onto the slums. Explosions tore through the streets. Towers crumbled. Refugees ran, wailing in terror. Elias froze, horror burning through him. They're not after the soldiers, he whispered. His voice cracked. They're after the people. Taliener's feathers flattened in despair. They mean to break you, Elias, to make you watch. Elias' hands trembled as fire rained down. His jaw clenched, eyes blazing with fury and grief. No, he said, voice low and cold. Not while I still breathe. He turned toward the falling fire and walked forward. The broken world, and firestorms raged for hours. When the smoke finally thinned, the refugee quarter was nothing but rubble and ash. Buildings lay shattered. Craters burned. The cries of the wounded echoed in the ruins. Elias staggered through the wreckage with Taliener at his side. His jacket was scorched, his knife blackened from soot. His eyes were hollow, burning with something colder than rage. He knelt beside a collapsed wall, pulling stones away with bleeding hands. Beneath, a Cairene child whimpered, her feathers singed. Elias lifted her free, holding her against his chest. I've got you, he whispered. I've got you. The child's mother rushed forward, tears streaking her dust-covered face. She clutched her daughter, bowing to Elias again and again. Elias forced himself to his feet, scanning the devastation. Everywhere he looked, suffering. The Dominion hadn't struck the city's defenses. They hadn't targeted military positions. They had burned the weak. To break him. Taliener's feathers drooped, her eyes wet. They wanted you to see this? They wanted you to carry it on your soul. Elias' jaw clenched. Then I'll carry it, and I'll make them choke on it. They could not stay. Dominion soldiers swarmed the ruins, dragging survivors into transports. Some to be executed, others to be taken. Gods knew where. Elias and Taliener slipped away into the wastelands. Beyond the city. For days they walked through broken lands, fields of ash, rivers choked with oil, forests stripped bare for war factories. Everywhere, the mark of the Dominion. At night, they sheltered in caves or burned out vehicles. Elias repaired what he could with scraps, makeshift heaters from twisted coils, shelters from torn hull plates. His hands never stopped moving. Taliener watched him one night as he patched a torn blanket with wire and tape. You are always building, always fixing, even when it seems pointless. Elias didn't look up. Back home, if something broke, you fixed it. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't wait for someone stronger to hand you a solution. You just worked. Because not fixing it meant someone died. She tilted her head, feathers rustling softly. That is your strength. Elias, not your weapons, not your fury, but this. He met her eyes, weary but steady. We make do, and we move forward. They weren't alone in the WASTELANDS on the fifth night. As they rested near a wrecked transport, shadows moved in the dark. Dozens of them. Armed, ragged, eyes wary. Refugees, survivors. Fighters who had fled the Dominion's fire. Their leader was a broad-shouldered alien with scaled skin and eyes like molten stone. He introduced himself with a rumbling voice. I am Koran of the Shalvek, and you, human, you are the one they whisper about. Elias said nothing, watching carefully. Koran continued, the Dominion calls you dangerous. They burn cities because of you. That makes you interesting. Some of his people laughed bitterly. Others looked at Elias with hope. Elias finally spoke, his voice flat. I'm not here to be interesting. I'm here to fight back. Koran studied him, then grinned with sharp teeth. Then perhaps we walk the same road. The Shalvek camp was hidden in the ruins of an old factory. Machines lay rusting, silent giants frozen mid-motion. The air stank of oil and decay. But to Elias, it was opportunity. He spent days crawling through the wrecks, pulling apart circuits, rewiring power cells, stripping weapons for parts. With bare hands and scavenged tools, he built what they needed most. A cracked generator became a power source for heaters. A gutted mining drone was reshaped into a rolling bomb. Plasma rifles, stripped from fallen soldiers, were rebuilt into something more reliable. The Shalvek watched in awe. They had hidden here for years, surviving on scraps, never daring to dream of fighting back. Now, under the humans' hands, broken junk became weapons of hope. Koran clapped him on the shoulder one night, laughing deep. You are no warrior, human, but you forge war with your hands. Elias looked at him, expression unreadable. War is just survival. I've been surviving all my life. The Dominion found them sooner than expected. Drones swept the skies. Armored transports thundered across the plains. The factory shook with a roar of engines. The Shalvek panicked. They had fought before, always to lose, always to flee. Elias stood in the center of the factory floor, wiping grease from his hands. His voice was calm, but it carried. They think we're broken. They think we'll scatter. But we're not running. Kalyaner stepped beside him, feathers flaring bright. We fight, together. The Shalvek hesitated. Then Koran raised his rifle high. Together. A roar of voices followed. The Dominion came at dawn. Transports slammed down, doors opening to unleash troops in black armor. Drones whined overhead. The wasteland shook with the weight of war. Inside the factory, Elias flipped a switch. The gutted mining drone he had rebuilt sputtered to life, rolling forward on squealing wheels. It lurched into the enemy line, sparks trailing before detonating in a thunderous blast. The first wave of soldiers vanished in fire. The Shalvek surged from cover, rifles blazing. Kalyaner leapt from a balcony, slashing with claws. Elias fired. One of the rebuilt rifles, each shot precise, controlled. The Dominion reeled. They had expected prey. Instead, they faced resistance. But the Dominion was vast. Their numbers swelled. Wave after wave poured forward. Elias ducked behind cover, panting. His rifle's charge was nearly gone. The Shalvek around him bled and fell. The air reeked of ozone and death. Kalyaner landed beside him, feathers ragged. We cannot hold much longer. Elias looked around the factory, eyes narrowing. Then his gaze locked on the great, rusted machinery above the cranes. Vats. The towers of old metal. We don't have to, he said. He sprinted across the floor, climbing a ladder toward the overhead machinery. Plasma bolts scorched the rungs behind him. He hauled himself up, slamming his knife into the old controls. Sparks flying. The cranes groaned awake. Massive steel beams, suspended for decades, creaked and swayed. Elias twisted wires together, forcing power through dead circuits. The Dominion pushed inside, flooding the floor below. Elias yanked a lever. With a scream of tortured metal, the beams dropped. Dozens of Dominion soldiers vanished under the avalanche. Dust and smoke engulfed the hall. The Shalvik roared. Rallying. Elias stood above them, face blackened with soot, chest heaving. His voice thundered through the chaos. You see? They can bleed. They can break. They are not gods. They are just monsters in armor. And monsters can fall. The factory shook with the sound of voices. Shalvik, Kareen, refugees all shouting. As one. But far above, orbiting the broken world, Dominion warships moved into position. Their cannons glowed with gathering fire. In the command deck of the flagship, Lord Virith watched the battle feeds with cold eyes. The human had not broken. Worse, he was inspiring others. Virith's claws tapped against the console. Burn the factory. Burn the wastelands. Let the galaxy see what becomes of hope. The order was given. In the factory below, as Elias reloaded his rifle. The sky outside the shattered roof turned crimson. Taliener's feathers rippled in dread. They're not sending more troops. Elias followed her gaze. His stomach dropped. The warships were charging their main cannons, and they were aiming at the entire region. Asterisk fire in the stars. The sky burned red. From the shattered roof of the factory, Elias could see them. 3 Dominion warships, black silhouettes. Against the dawn, their cannons glowing like suns. The ground rumbled with the charge building in their cores. One shot would be enough to erase the factory, the wastelands, the fighters who dared resist. Taliener's feathers bristled with terror. They mean to erase us. Not just you, everyone. Koran's molten eyes narrowed as he gripped his rifle. Then we die fighting. Elias stood frozen, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed that this was the end. The Dominion wasn't sending soldiers anymore. They were sending judgment. He looked at the factory's gutted machinery, at the rusted cranes, at the old reactors he had patched to life with scavenged wiring. And an insane idea hit him. Not today, he whispered. He sprinted across the floor, shoving past fighters. Clear the vats. Move the wounded out. The Shalvik stared, bewildered. What are you doing, human? Koran barked. Asterisk, turning this factory into a cannon. Elias' eyes burned. Now help me or we're all ash. Taliener beak. Clicked in shock, but then her feathers flared with resolve. You heard him. Move! The camp erupted into motion. Fighters dragged the wounded. Refugees hauled scrap and cables to Elias' side. He climbed atop the main reactor, hands flying over scorched panels. Sparks spat into his face. He didn't care. The Dominion cannons above screamed louder, their glow spreading across the sky. Elias ripped open a coolant valve, steam blasting into the air. He slammed wires together, rerouted power, jammed his knife into a jammed switch. Come on, you old bastard. Give me something. Asterisk, the reactor hummed and roared. Power surged through the dead factory, lights blazing for the first time in decades. Elias shouted down to Koran. Load the vats with anything volatile fuel cells, plasma charges, doesn't matter. Koran grinned like a beast. Now this is madness. Asterisk, the Shalvik stuffed the vats with stolen plasma cores, scavenged explosives, even barrels of chemical waste. It didn't matter what it was. Energy was energy. Elias rerouted the reactor's output, forcing it into the vats. They began to glow. Vibrating with unstable charge, Taliener leapt beside him, feathers singed from the heat. You cannot fire this contraption into orbit. It will tear itself apart. Elias' teeth bared in a grim smile. Then we just needed to tear them apart first. Above, the Dominion flagship's cannon reached full charge. The commander's voice echoed through the fleet. Fire. The sky split open. A beam of pure destruction lanced down, blinding. White, screaming toward the factory dot inside, Elias slammed his hand onto the final switch. The vats erupted. A column of energy blasting upward like the fury of a dying star. The beams met in the sky with a thunderclap that shook the world. For a moment, the heavens themselves seemed to tear apart. Asterisk, when the light faded, one Dominion warship was gone. A burning husk spiraled downward, trailing fire as it slammed into the wastelands with a quake that shattered windows for miles. The other two ships staggered, their cannons flickering. The fighters below stared in shock. Then roars of triumph shook the ruins. They had destroyed a Dominion warship, with junk, with desperation, with human madness. Elias sagged against the reactor, chest heaving, burns across his arms. But his eyes blazed. See? They're not invincible. The Dominion response was instant. Fighters screamed down from the remaining warships, swarms of black wings blotting out the dawn. Dropships poured soldiers onto the plains. Coron roared, raising his rifle. Then let them come. We will send them to the ashes. The factory erupted in chaos once more. Rifles cracked. Plasma bolts tore the air. Explosions shook the walls. Elias staggered through smoke, dragging cables, setting charges, turning every scrap of machinery into a trap. Pipes burst with scalding steam. Cranes swung like hammers. Mines rigged from power cells ripped open. Earth beneath enemy boots. The Dominion advanced, but every step led them. Taliener fought at Elias' side, feathers blackened with soot, claws dripping with blood. She moved like fire, her beak snapping as she slashed through armored throats. Elias. Rifle clicked empty. He swung it like a club, smashing a soldier's visor before ripping the man's own weapon free. He fought like a man possessed, like a man who refused to die quietly. Then the ground itself trembled. A shadow fell over the battlefield. The Dominions. Second warship descended low, its belly glowing with new fire. It wasn't aiming its main cannon this time, Dot. It was deploying something worse, Dot, with a roar of engines. The warship unleashed a siege engine, a towering mech of black armor, bristling. With cannons stomping into the ruins like a titan of old, Dot, the resistance froze. Even Corin's molten eyes widened. We cannot fight that. Elias stared up at the giant machine, chest heaving, sweat dripping. His knife hung from his belt, his rifle nearly spent. Every part of him screamed to run, to hide, but then he saw. The refugees huddled in the shadows, the children clutching their parents. The Shalvik who had dared hope again for the first time in years. If he ran, they all died. His voice broke the silence, hoarse but steady. Then we don't fight it head on. We take it apart. The siege engine's cannons began to charge, glowing brighter than the dawn. Elias turned to Taliener and Coron, eyes blazing. Cover me. He sprinted toward the Titan Dot asterisk. The betrayal of the siege engine fell Dot. It collapsed in a storm of fire. And screeching metal, detonating as Elias jammed his scavenged explosives into its joint core. The blast hurled him across the ruins, but when he staggered up, coughing blood, the Titan lay broken, earning against the dawn. The resistance roared, voices rising above smoke and carnage. They had done the impossible. Elias stood among them, battered, bleeding, but alive. And in their eyes, he saw something he had never seen before. Hope. Word of the battle spread like wildfire. Across Virit's wastelands, huddled camps whispered the same phrase. The Dominion bled. In the undercities of the consortiums, core worlds, broadcasts smuggled by pirates, showed blurred images of a human standing amid wreckage. One fist raised, Dominion wreckage burning behind him. He became a symbol, a myth, a warning, and the leaders of the Galactic Consortium did not like it. The High Council convened in secret. 12 alien leaders gathered in the crystal chamber of Verith's orbiting spire, their robes glimmering like oil in the sterile light. Screens floated in the air, replaying footage of the ruined factory, the falling warship, the broken siege engine. A Shalvik general pointed at the human figure in the center of the chaos. This creature, he rallies them. His madness infects the oppressed. Entire sectors could ignite if this is allowed to spread. A Selith chancellor's tendrils writhed uneasily. The Dominion is already demanding his head. They claimed humanity violated neutrality accords, that the human is waging war outside sanction. They want blood, another hissed. And if we do not give them his, they will claim ours. Silence filled the chamber. The Dominion was too strong. The Consortium had survived this long by mowing at the right moments, feeding rebels to their overlords, sacrificing pawns to preserve the whole. Elias was a pawn. The council chair's voice echoed, coldly. Then let him burn. The betrayal came at dawn. Elias sat by the fire in the ruins of the factory, his burns wrapped in torn cloth, his body trembling from exhaustion. Taliener perched beside him, her feathers still singed from the fight. Corin, such sharpening a blade on a shard of steel. You should have died 10 times yesterday, the Shalvik muttered. But you didn't. That means the stars still have use for you. Elias gave a tired half-smile. Or they're just bad at math. He didn't see the shadows until it was too late. Consortium peacekeepers. Dozens of them stepped from the moon. Smoke, rifles leveled. Their insignia gleamed cold silver. Elias rose slowly, confusion darkening his face. What's this? The commander's voice was flat. Elias Gray, by order of the Galactic High Council, you are under arrest for war. Crimes and unauthorized aggression against Dominion assets. Taliener's feathers exploded in fury. War crimes? He saved us. The commander didn't even glance at her. The Dominion has filed charges. The Council has ratified them. Stand down, human. Coran surged to his feet, blade in hand. You cowards. You sell his blood to buy your skins? The rifles clicked, glowing with charge. Resist, and you die with him. Elias' stomach turned to stone. He looked at the fighters around him, ragged, wounded, terrified. If they fought, they'd all be cut down. His hands curled into fists. Every muscle screamed to resist. But then his eyes met Taliener's. Her gaze burned, not with fear, but with faith. Whatever happens, she whispered, don't let them break you. Elias raised his hands. I'll come quietly. Chains of glowing plasma bound his wrists. Asterisk, the peacekeepers dragged him through the wastelands like a criminal, past the refugees he had saved. Many wept. Some shouted curses at the soldiers. Others fell silent, their eyes burning with something. New anger not at the Dominion, but at the Consortium itself. Taliener tried to follow, but the soldiers shoved her back with rifle butts. Coran fought until 3 peacekeepers stunned him unconscious. Elias was shoved into a transport pod, sealed behind shimmering energy fields. As the pod rose into the sky, he looked down at the ruins, at the broken siege engine, at the smoke curling. Into the dawn, and he swore he would not let this be the end. The trial was theater. The council chamber overflowed with delegates. Dominion emissaries watched from thrones of black steel, their faces hidden behind masks of obsidian. Elias was dragged. To the center, chains still glowing around his wrists, the council chair's voice thundered. Elias Grave Terra, you stand accused of instigating war, sabotaging peace, and endangering galactic stability. How do you plead? The crowd jeered. Alien leaders whispered. Dominion cameras recorded every moment, ready to broadcast his humiliation to the galaxy. Elias looked up at them all, at the leaders who had cowered, at the Dominion, who demanded his head, at the galaxy that seemed eager to condemn him. His throat was dry. His body ached, but his voice cut through the chamber like a blade. I plead guilty. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The council chair leaned forward, cold triumph in her eyes. You admit your crimes? Elias raised his head higher, his voice gaining strength. Guilty of fighting for those you abandoned. Guilty of standing when all of you knelt. Guilty of refusing to let your fear chain me like it chains you. The chamber erupted in shouts. Dominion emissaries snarled. Consortium leaders hissed. And then Elias spoke the 5 words that would shatter the galaxy. Humanity does not kneel. The chamber fell silent. Every word echoed like a drumbeat, carried across cameras and combs, bouncing through networks, slipping past firewalls, spreading like wildfire. In slums and camps, in pirate ships and broken colonies, beings of 100 species repeated those words, whispered them like a prayer. The Dominion emissaries rose in fury, voices thundering. Then humanity has declared war. The council chair slammed her staff against the floor. So be it. Humanity is an enemy of the galaxy. The guards seized Elias, dragging him toward the execution chambers. But as he was pulled from the hall, he caught one last glimpse of the crowd of Talioner, who had slipped past guards into the chamber's shadows, her feathers blazing with defiance. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Elias knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. The spark that burns the galaxy, the cell was cold. Elias sat on the steel floor, wrists chained to the wall, bruises swelling along his arms. Where peacekeepers had struck him, the silence pressed heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the Spire's engines as it drifted in orbit above Verith. He didn't know how much time had passed since the trial. Hours? Days? It didn't matter. The sentence was clear. Execution. At dawn, he leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. He should have been afraid, but all he felt was a strange, steady calm. Humanity does not kneel. The words still echoed in his chest. He had no way of knowing if they'd spread, no way of knowing if they'd live after him. But he clung to the thought that somewhere, someone had heard, and maybe that was enough. The door hissed. A guard entered, a towering figure with plated armor and a visor that hid his face. On your feet, human. Elias rose slowly, chains rattling. The guard marched him through sterile corridors lit with cold blue light. At the end, the doors opened to the execution chamber. It was vast, circular, lined with seats filled by delegates, generals, emissaries. Cameras hovered in the air, ready to broadcast the death of a human across the stars. At the center stood a platform. Upon it, a device hummed a disintegration beam designed to erase every trace of flesh and bone. Elias was led onto the platform. Chains locked him into place. The council chair stood above, her voice ringing across the hall. Elias Grave Terra, you brought war to our worlds. You defied order. For your crimes, you will be erased, so that none may follow your path. The Dominion emissaries leaned forward, black masks gleaming with satisfaction. The beam began to charge. But before it fired, a sound cut through the chamber. Not a shout, not a weapon, A voice dotted came from the crowd, low but steady. Humanity does not kneel. The chamber froze. Elias' eyes flicked toward the sound. He saw Talioner standing in the shadows, feathers blazing crimson, her head held high. Then another voice joined hers. A Shalvik warrior, scarred and broken, smuggled into the chamber as a servant. Humanity does not kneel. More voices, louder now. From the seats, from the balconies, from the delegates who had dared to believe. Humanity does not kneel. The chant grew, filling the chamber, echoing off crystal walls, rattling the Dominion emissaries where they sat. Humanity does not kneel. The executioner hesitated, hand hovering over the switch. The council chairs screamed. Silence them. Silence them now. Peacekeepers surged into the crowd, but the chant only grew louder. Delegates tore off their insignias. Servants struck their masters. The chamber erupted into chaos. Elias felt the chains rattle as Talioner leapt onto the platform, claws flashing. She ripped the controls apart, sparks raining as the disintegration beam sputtered dead. Koran appeared next, bloodied but unbowed, having cut his way through guards. He slammed his rifle butt into the executioner's skull, then roared. Free him! The chains shattered under his blow. Elias staggered forward, free for the first time since his arrest. He looked out at the chamber, at the chaos, the rebellion, the fear in the eyes of those who had once mocked him, and he raised his voice, hoarse but unbroken. You wanted to see humanity's crime? Here it is. We do not bow. We do not break. And neither should you. The chamber exploded in fury, half the crowd rushing the guards, the other half fleeing in terror. Sirens wailed. Dominion soldiers stormed into the chamber, weapons blazing. Talioner grabbed Elias' arm, dragging him toward a side corridor. This way. They ran through smoke and screams, Koran covering their escape with wild fury, his rifle spitting fire. Peacekeepers clashed with rebels. Dominion soldiers cut down anyone in their path. The spire shook as explosions ripped through its halls. Elias, Talioner, and Koran burst into the hangar. Ships burned, alarms howled, fighters scrambled for escape. Dominion soldiers closed in. Elias grabbed a fallen rifle, turned, and fired until the barrel melted in his hands. Talioner ripped a soldier apart with her claws. Koran hurled another into the fire, but more poured in. Too many then the hangar doors exploded. A stolen Corvette roared in, guns blazing. Resistance fighters poured out, shouting the words that now shook the galaxy. Humanity does not kneel. The tide turned in a storm of fire and steel. They fled into the stars. The Corvette tore free of the spire, slipping into the black void as Dominion warships scrambled to pursue. Elias slumped against the wall, body trembling, lungs burning. He looked at Talioner, at Koran, at the fighters who had risked everything to pull him from death. And for the first time, he allowed himself to believe. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war. In the weeks that followed, his words spread faster than any fleet. Across mining colonies, slaves rose against overseers. On distant worlds, flags were torn down, Dominion banners burned. In pirate ships, mercenary dens, forgotten stations, beings of every species whispered the same phrase like a vow. Humanity does not kneel. The Dominion branded humanity as the greatest threat to galactic order. They vowed to burn Earth itself to ash. But in the darkness, something new had begun. Not just rebellion, not just resistance, a movement, a spark that would grow into fire. At the heart of it stood Elias Gray, the human who refused to kneel. He stood on the deck of the stolen Corvette, staring out at the endless stars. His body ached, scars burned, but his spirit had never been stronger. Talianer stepped beside him, feathers brushing his arm. They will come for us with everything they have. Elias nodded slowly. Then we'll give them everything we are. Corin joined them, molten eyes burning with savage pride. The galaxy has feared the Dominion for centuries. Now they will fear something else. Elias' gaze hardened. Not fear, hope. He clenched his fists, watching the stars burn bright in the void. They thought they could break us. They thought we'd kneel. He turned, his voice a promise that carried to every soul aboard. Now we'll show them what happens when humanity stands.